I got you.
Fantastic.
I got you, girl.
So I am Shannon McGraw, and so this is the first time that I am publicly saying that my name is Shannon McGraw.
Okay.
So let me just then go back a little bit. So how many of you have young children, like little children? All right, then you might, well, I mean like, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, thank God.
You're like, I'm out of that stage. Mine are in college now, so I'm like, I'm good to go. And I'm divorced, and I'm like, how old, if I'm dating somebody, how old are your kids? You're out. I'm playing.
Did you give up your nickname?
Do what?
Did you give up your nickname when you got married?
My nickname?
Mick?
What's
Oh.
my nickname?
What's a nickname?
What's your maiden
Oh,
name?
McGraw.
Oh, McGraw.
Yeah.
That's my maiden name.
Oh.
I took it back.
There you
I
go.
took it back.
It's hard
I was
to release your
intentional.
nickname.
I took it back.
I get it.
But I'm
Okay.
like, what is this? Is it like my stripper name?
No, Shannon Charbonneau is a stripper
But I'll
name.
take-
But that wasn't planned.
Okay, so here we are. I am now Shannon McGraw, Show Up With Intention speaker. And so what's interesting about this, when I was asked to come here, they were like, talk about loving yourself now. And I was like, oh, that's harder than you think, truly, because of what I've been through. Now, I have a laundry list. I do, and I'll spew it out to you here in a second, like as a laundry list, but there's a story I want to start because it's where I began. So first of all, I am an incest survivor and a rape survivor twice over, once in high school, once in college. Met my first, now ex-husband, in college while I was going through a rape trial. I was 19. Got married, thought that he was fantastic, and he is. I never want to put anybody down. We all have a story, even the most evil people you think that are in your life. They too have a story. And I would love to just simply be his friend at this point. But I thought he was safe. I thought he was good. He was somebody to be with and to spend the rest of my life with. What I didn't realize, even as the priest looked at us and said, you do not need to be getting married. You are too hostile. You are too, I had too much going on in my life, and I didn't recognize that. I was 21 years old, and I was like, I need to get married. I need to settle down. I need to have babies. And so I was still filled with so much anger and resentment and frustration because of the things that I had been through in my past. I ended up with 2 young kids at a very young age. I had a 2.5-year-old and a brand new baby. And I was breastfeeding my youngest son when I began to smell what we all know as the worst thing that you ever want to smell when you have a 2.5-year-old running around the house by himself. He was learning how to go number 2 on his own. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's getting a little bit too quiet. What's going on? I take Seth, my youngest, he's 1 month old, and I follow the stench. I go into a bathroom and I find that my 2.5-year-old had done just that. Not only had he tried to go to the bathroom by himself, but he decided that it was a really cool art piece and that he needed to paint the entire bathroom with his feces. He put it all over the walls, he put it all over the toilet, it was all over the floor, it was everywhere. And I was filled. I was this woman that was very angry. I was pissed. I didn't know at the time how much what had happened to me had affected me internally. And I felt like this little sweet 2.5-year-old had done this to me on purpose. Like that he was getting back at me, or that, you know what I mean? And so when I saw this, I was filled with so much anger and rage. I was like, and I went and grabbed his soiled underwear. That's okay.
Hi,
and I went
welcome.
and grabbed his soiled underwear, and I went to shove it in his face like he was a dog. And when I did that, and I went to do that, and this little 2.5-year-old looked at me with his big round eyes, and he just stopped. And he looked at me, and I froze. Something in me just hit. And I was like, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I don't want to be this person anymore. And I just dropped the soiled underwear. I grabbed him. I held him. I hugged on him. I've got Seth screaming, crying in the crib. I go and I get him and I clean them up. And the whole time I'm a Christian, and I was just muttering, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm taking them, and I'm cleaning them up, and Ryan's playing with his Thomas the Train track, and he's all happy, and he ends up falling asleep playing with his trains. Seth is fed, he falls asleep, I put him to bed, I go back into that bathroom. And as I just looked around that room and thought to myself, this is your life. It's a bunch of crap. I need to change it. Like, I need to be intentional, I need to do something, and I need to do something different. And that was a moment that I got up on the floor and I cleaned all of it and I got rid of it, and everybody was good, the house is clean, and I found myself by myself. And that is when I cried out to God, higher power, whatever, but for me it's God, and I just said, you know what, Lord, take something with my life and do something with it, otherwise I don't want to live this life anymore. And from that moment, I recognized that it's only me that can change me. It's only me that can make me happy. It's only me that can make sure that no matter what goes on in this life, I have to be intentional about where I want to be, the choices that I make, and what I want to do. I can't change anybody else. I can't do anything for anybody else. I can't do anything except for me. And I began to work with teens. I wanted to help others. I knew that no matter whatever went on in my life, that I wanted it to be for the good and for the better. And so I began to help others, and I began to talk and speak to teens and do all of that. And I was a youth minister for 15 years. I spoke with a youth team. I spoke all over the world. And I began to have adults coming up to me and saying, you're telling my story, and I've never told anybody. And it hit me. How many of us have had so much happen to us that we've never been able to talk about? So that's when I started Hopeful Hearts Ministry, to begin to work with adults that are mainly middle and upper class, that have been abused in their past because they've never been able to truly talk about it because it would offend or the family or cause havoc in the family and that sort of thing. So that is a gist of what happened in my life for a little bit, but I need to go then now to why I am who I am and how I'm trying to love myself now. I'm not trying, I love myself now. But it's finding myself in a different space and still receiving it and accepting it. 5 years ago, now almost 6, I say 5, it's almost 6, 4 days before my second book was released, I found out that my ex-husband, was my husband at the time, was having a 1.5-year affair with his massage therapist, who he then hired to be the secretary of his company. And I had just written a book about us, and it was released 4 days later. And I still got to go on stage and promote it and say he's the best husband ever because I dedicated it to him. And felt as if I was the bad one in the marriage because I was the one that had suffered abuse, and I was the one that had been through so much, and I was the one that was broken and needed to be fixed. So, I think for me that God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, to me it's God, brought that up directly in that moment, was very intentional with the timing, because what he showed me was that I am not broken, I am just bent. And I have everything in me to be able to change who I am, to work on who I am, and to be the person that I have always been created to be. So, this began a journey of truly opening up my eyes and saying, I don't want to please everybody else. I don't want to become something that everybody expects me to be. I simply want to be me, whether you like it or not. I'm going to be intentional about who I have been created to be. I'm going to use the gifts and talents that I've been given and that I don't even know about yet. It's a day-to-day thing. It's a first things first. I began to work on that, not knowing what to do with this marriage, because at the time I was speaking for a very religious organization that doesn't believe in divorce, so I was trying to work through that as well, and then ended up with cancer that then metastasized, and then I had to go into radiation. Upon going into radiation 4 months later, we were flooded by Hurricane Harvey and lost everything in our home. We were rescued by the awesome Cajun Navy.
Yes.
And then after being rescued by the awesome Cajun Navy, then my ex's dad died. So then I took care of his mom. Then we moved back into the upstairs of our bedroom, of our house, as our house was getting fixed. And of course, this marriage is all broken, not going to happen anymore because he does not realize that. Then we get back into the house. I go tell him, this is not going to happen. We are not working. And he goes, it's easy. You don't give me what I need. I don't give you what you need. I said, right. I was prepared to leave. 1 week later, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Ended up having to take care of him. I take care of my father, who is very quickly declining. My dad looks at me and says, you are the strongest woman I know, and you can do this. So sometimes our tribe is not just the women in our life. Sometimes it could be your dad that maybe you didn't have a really good relationship with until the day that he realized he was dying, right? You never know. But I think the biggest key thing that he said to me was help me to realize who I am again, and that you do have your strength, that you do have everything in you to be able to do what you need to do. Even if I was going to be the poorest I was ever going to be in my entire life and have to start all over. But he was right. My dad died then. 3 months later, he died on Christmas Eve of 2018, and I left my husband and was divorced in June 2019, and I took my name back. There you go.
Me too.